Hello and welcome to National Park Wild. I'm Eric, and a year ago, I ranked every national park I've been to. I've now been to 4 new ones, and have revisited quite a couple, so it's time for an update. I've been to 62 national parks, so maybe you wonder, why top 50? Well, there are 8 or so parks that I did not spend a lot of time in or it was a long time ago, and I don't want to include those because they would have a low ranking, and I don't want to deter people from visiting. Those parks are good, I just didn't see as much of them. So if a park is not mentioned in this video, either I did not see much of it, or it's American Samoa, because I've not been to that one. Now, the most important caveat I must put in before we start this list: this is subjective. I hate that I have to say that, but when many are looking for an objective list, which I understand, I need to make it clear I'm not trying to be definitive or say one park is better than the other. I'll use the words best and worst possibly, but just because it says that, it's still based on my experiences, my opinions, one person. And I know all national parks are good. I just like some more than others, and I enjoy making rankings. I spent just a few days in some parks, I spent over a week in others, and I unfortunately just don't have the time or resources to see everything in every national park. So it's going to be based entirely off of what I have done, but it's not a definitive list. So if you are looking for that, maybe WatchMojo is the place for you. But now I will lay out some preferences so you know sort of a criteria that I go off of here. My favorite type of scenery is mountains, then desert, then beach, then forest. I love waterfalls, I find caves interesting. I live in Florida, so similar Florida scenery is probably going to rank lower for the most part. Diversity and scale are very important for scenery for me. Diversity because of the variety it provides, and scale because it puts you in perspective, and the grand worlds of nature are just something that is quite awe-inspiring for me. Regarding activities, hiking is easily my favorite. I also enjoy snorkeling, camping, stargazing, whitewater rafting, driving, and biking. Wildlife is important for me because being in the same area as a large other animal is just something that stands out to me anytime I experience it in a national park. Accessibility and crowds are not a factor for me. So that is pretty much everything in regards to criteria. It's not set in stone, there will be some variations, but for those who are interested in seeing a video about 50 of the most beautiful places in America, let's begin. First, 3 honorable mentions. These are parks that did not quite make the cut. Gateway Arch in Missouri, Indiana Dunes in Indiana, and Cuyahoga Valley in Ohio. These 3 parks have their strengths, and if you're into things such as geologic history or even just American history in general, they have strengths. Cuyahoga Valley has nice waterfalls, Indiana Dunes is a pretty coastline, and even Gateway Arch, which is my least favorite national park, has the arch structure and a nice museum. Now for the top 50. Number 50, Hot Springs National Park in Arkansas. Many put this near the very bottom, but I enjoy this park for its nice scenery and hikes such as Goat Rock and Balance Rock outside of the main city area, along with the Gulf Gorge campground. Number 49 is Biscayne National Park in Florida. This is close to home for me, so while there is solid snorkeling, and I enjoyed paddling alongside manatees at points, on the land there isn't anything to do, and the water activities aren't quite enough to bolster this ranking. Number 48 is Everglades National Park in Florida. This is certainly a park that is close to home for me. Seeing alligators is always enjoyable, but most of the wading birds and even other animals you see here, I see pretty much every day, so it's not quite as new to me, and it feels very local. It doesn't stand out the same way others do, though the diversity of wildlife for anyone outside of Florida, I think, would very much impress them. Number 47 is Congaree National Park in South Carolina, an underrated national park for sure, as I love the massive trees. The Boardwalk Trail is one of my favorites for its very interesting perspective of the forest, and seeing wildlife from hawks to otters to deer is wonderful here. Number 46 is Shenandoah National Park in Virginia. This is mainly known for Skyline Drive, a wonderful scenic drive through mountains, and you can do some great hikes here. Short ones like Bear Fence Mountain, there are plenty of waterfalls, there's some solid wildlife and history, and this is definitely a very nice eastern park. Number 45 is New River Gorge National Park in West Virginia, the newest national park as of this video being made. This is mainly known for a bridge going over the gorge, and that is a beautiful view, but there are dozens of views along this gorge that give different perspectives, different viewpoints, and going here in fall is the best for the popping colors of the trees, and going down to Sandstone Falls is an unforgettable experience. Number 44 is Wind Cave National Park in South Dakota. The cave formations are not grand in size, but they are intricate and unique. And above the ground, you have abundant bison, prairie dogs, and other South Dakota wildlife. Number 43 is Voyageurs National Park in Minnesota. This is mainly known for water activities, and I recommend prioritizing water activities if you go here. Fishing is some of the best here, along with boating and canoeing. There's also some nice areas along the shore. You'll see plenty of bald eagles, along with some nice animals such as deer and moose, possibly along the shore. The biggest flaw with this park is that unfortunately, there are several ticks on many trails, and this was something that somewhat made trails a little sour for me. Still definitely worth a visit. Number 42 is Mammoth Cave National Park in Kentucky. The longest cave system in the world has some very massive rooms and unique formations, such as the impressive frozen Niagara. There's also bats and cave crickets and cave spiders in these cave tours. Above the ground, you can enjoy wildlife including the standard deer that you would see in this area, along with even some mountain scenery. Number 41 is Mesa Verde National Park in Colorado. This park is primarily known for its cliff dwellings, and while these are quite impressive and can bring you back in time to thousands of years ago when these were built, this park also deserves credit for its plateau scenery. You have a sort of canyon to it that is very different, and there's a lot of diversity in the types of scenery and history you can learn about here. If you like history, this could be one of your very favorite parks. Number 40 is Petrified Forest National Park in Arizona. The glaring flaw with this park is the fact that it closes at sundown, so things that are commonplace in other national parks, such as camping and stargazing, are not activities here. However, the park makes up for that with diverse colors in its scenery, including the vibrant blue mesa, painted desert, and crystal forest. Number 39 is Badlands National Park in South Dakota. This is one some may like a lot more, and I enjoy being able to get so close to the rock formations here, and they are quite grand in scale, and there are so many different viewpoints that give some of the most diverse rock formation scenery of any national park. The fact that this park is close to the interstate is interesting as well. It does not necessarily help the park, and while I enjoy the scenery here, it's not personally my favorite, though this is absolutely the most beautiful area in South Dakota for me. Number 38 is Joshua Tree National Park in California, one many would consider one of the best. This desert park has tons of unique cacti, or yucca plants known as Joshua trees, along with some fascinating rock formations. Most of the rock formations are small scale, so in scope this does not rank the highest. But in terms of the abundance of activities and things to do here, this is a wonderful park, and if you like rock climbing, this could be a top tier park for you for sure. Number 37 is Redwood National Park, also in California. This one, I think because it's beaches and forests, as opposed to the mountains and deserts I prefer, ranks lower than maybe it should. But the massive trees, tranquil hikes, rugged coastline, and abundant elk make for an unforgettable national park experience. If you like solitude, this could be one of your favorite national parks for sure. Number 36 is Isle Royale National Park in Michigan. An island in Lake Superior is a very unique setting for a park. Backcountry hiking here is some of the best. I've gone fairly deep into the island, but my favorite hiking area is still Stoll Trail, with the rocky coastline being my favorite scenery in the park. This park also has some fascinating wildlife, including moose and wolves. I have not seen wolves, but a bull moose sighting here was one of my favorites. Number 35 is Saguaro National Park in Arizona. This is my equivalent of the Everglades. Because I see much of the Everglades stuff at home, the unique animals here add quite a bit. First you have the flora, primarily being saguaro cacti. Seeing thousands of those is something you don't get in Florida. But I also love how many animals I saw here. Perhaps I was lucky, but seeing coyotes, falcons, eagles, great horned owls, 10 lizard species at least, and tons of other animals, that is quite an interesting collection. The park also has gorgeous sunsets and wonderful stargazing. Number 34 is Virgin Islands National Park in Virgin Islands. Some of the beaches here are the most wonderful postcard photo ops you can ever get. but I prefer being in the water at these beaches. Snorkeling alongside turtles, sharks, stingrays is definitely fun for me. I also feel the Ramhead Trail is definitely worth trying, as it's very similar to Stoll Trail, but even better. Number 33, Kenai Fjords National Park in Alaska. This is a wonderful Alaska park, but compared to the rest of the Last Frontier, it's not quite my favorite park. I enjoy Harding Icefield the most, including Exit Glacier. All of these mountains, they're some of the best examples of seeing receding glaciers, but they still retain a shocking scale, and being able to walk right up to them, and even on top of them, makes for a fantastic experience. You also have wildlife including moose, and hundreds of bald eagles when I went, and a wonderful coastal area with whales and otters. Number 32 is Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico. Above the ground, there is little of note. Below the ground, you have the best caves in the United States, with stalactites and stalagmites galore, and expansive rooms, and being able to walk through them on your own. Self-guided cave tours are some of my favorite national park experiences I've had. Unfortunately, this park just doesn't rank quite as high, as even though I love caves, I am more fascinated by other scenery. Though this park I could easily see being number 1 for many, even though this park inexplicably is at the bottom of many rankings. Number 31 is Pinnacles National Park, an underrated one for sure. You have colorful, massive rock formations on lush green mountains, providing a unique contrast. I also feel the hiking here is some of my favorite, with Talus Caves being among my favorites, and I also enjoy going through the wildlife areas. I have seen California condors here. That's a fun one. There's also snakes. That could be fun or not so fun for you, depending on who you are. But what stands out here is the solitude, hiking, scenery, and the bird watching. Definitely a park that deserves a lot more credit, in my opinion. Number 30 is Great Sand Dunes National Park in Colorado. This could have been number 1. Anything in the top 30 could have been number 1. They're all that good. This one stands out for High Dune Trail. Hiking on the sand dunes and getting to the top, seeing an expansive, practically untouched dune field, is glorious, and the mountain backdrop adds quite a bit as well. So this is one of my favorite national park hikes, and this is an underrated national park overall. Number 29 is Great Basin National Park in Nevada. Sticking on the underrated note, no one goes here because Las Vegas is 5 hours away, and that is the closest major city. There is practically nothing at this park when you're driving to it. Then, boom, mountains. They are huge. 13,000 feet is quite staggering for being in the middle of a desert, essentially, in Nevada. And driving up to them is stellar. I love hiking to the glacier, seeing the bristlecone pines, which are the oldest trees in the world. There is so much to enjoy here, and this is definitely a park worth visiting, because you certainly won't be bothered by a whole lot of people. Number 28, Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park in Colorado. This is a unique canyon, because instead of being like any other canyon in the US pretty much, you have narrow, steep, black granite. And this makes for the most unique of any canyon I've ever seen, because every perspective you get from every overlook is wildly different. No other canyon can say that quite the same way. But I like the eeriness of walking along this one. Being right along the edge is somewhat terrifying, but it's also a wonderful experience. One thing that stands out here, though, was lucky wildlife sightings, including a black bear, which I have not seen too many of. Number 27 is Haleakala National Park in Hawaii. The coastal area with the waterfalls is certainly nice, but what stands out to me is the massive Haleakala summit, with vibrant colors that are practically Martian in their landscape. And on certain days, like the one when I went, you can see other Hawaiian islands from the peak. Number 26, Wrangell St. Elias National Park in Alaska. This is the largest national park, and while there isn't a lot that too many explore, there are certain sites here that are among the best. If you've been on an Alaskan cruise before and stopped at Hubbard Glacier, you've probably seen this park, because that is part of Wrangell St. Elias. However, the best parts for me are on the land, with Root Glacier being one of my favorite hikes. I enjoyed whitewater rafting here, but I love going through Kennecott, being surrounded by mountains, and practically engulfed in the most stellar glacier views I've gotten in nearly any national park. The fact that this ranks so low should speak to how good the other national parks are. Number 25 is Hawaii Volcanoes National Park in, surprisingly, Hawaii. This is a park that stands above Haleakala, mainly for the Kilauea caldera. Being able to see steam rising out of this massive, essentially hole in the ground. I love that. I love geothermal features. I'm a sucker for those, honestly. I should have made that clear earlier, but that's what makes this stand out. The volcanic activity is stellar here, and there's also coastline and so much to see. Hiking in Mauna Loa, there's some wildlife. There is a lot of diversity here, and this park is absolutely one of my favorite areas in all of Hawaii. Number 24 is Dry Tortugas National Park in Florida. Despite being in Florida, this is a change of pace for me. Taking a seaplane to this island that is 70 miles away from Key West is fascinating. You get excellent views of sharks, turtles, and shipwrecks from above. Fort Jefferson has a wonderful history, and learning about that is some of my favorite historical learning experiences I've ever had, and the snorkeling here is second to none in the United States, for the coaling docks having the most vibrant coral I've ever seen, and plenty of wildlife including barracudas. If those don't scare you, you'll love it here. And this park is also quite remote, so whether you're in the land, sea, or sky, this park is among the most underrated. Number 23 is Acadia National Park in Maine. This is my favorite national park east of the Mississippi, for its diversity. I love the beaches, primarily the rocky ones. Rocky coastline is always beautiful for me, and then you have amazing mountains, and some of the best hikes of any national park. I love Beehive and Acadia Mountain, and to top it all off, Cadillac Mountain provides some of my favorite sunrises and sunsets of any national park, and honestly, any location in the world. Number 22 is Sequoia National Park in California. The star here is mainly the trees. People love seeing General Sherman, the largest tree in the world. And while I love it for its grand size, what stands out to me is the mountains along General's Highway, and many other mountains as well. Hiking Tokapa Falls is a standout thing here, but I feel driving along and just seeing the Sierra Nevada mountains is one of my favorites here. I mentioned I love mountain scenery, and this is among the lowest ranked of the major mountain-based parks, and there are plenty more to come. Trust me. Number 21 is Mount Rainier National Park. It is difficult to see the peak of this mountain, due to often being clouds and fog. However, the mountain, if you do see it, is glorious. It is massive in size, and it is one of the best mountain views of any national park, and possibly any mountain in the world. I also love the waterfall hikes here. Grove of the Patriarchs is a tranquil and nice one. There was wildlife including black bears, and I can see why this, along with the great state of Washington's other national parks, is a favorite for many. Number 20 is Arches National Park, often considered top 5 or even top 1. This park for me is perfect. I just like others better. The big thing here that stands out as good is hiking. This park does not have the longest hikes, but it has some of the best, with Delicate Arch being one of the best designed trails anywhere, and a sunset hike here being otherworldly. I like every other site here, and while it does technically not have the grandest scenery compared to some of the other Utah parks even, I feel there is so much to see. You can fill a week here, and there is nothing to dislike about this park, unless crowds bother you, in which case maybe. But Arches definitely deserves a lot of the credit it gets. Number 19 is Canyonlands. Canyonlands is one that some have recently decided is underrated, and I think it's getting a lot more respect, so it definitely deserves that. Chesler Park hike in the Needles area, and by the way, the Needles area is the preferred one for me, is one of the best hikes ever. I would take it over Delicate Arch for its wacky spires that are somewhat quirky, but also intricate, grand, and beautiful. Island in the Sky can provide wonderful sunrises at Mesa Arch, and looking down toward the Needles and being above everything is a different perspective. So whether you're above or below, you will love this Utah scenery. Number 18 is Lassen Volcanic National Park, one that no one talks about and pretty much no one goes to, but I think it deserves a lot more credit. It is very similar to Yellowstone National Park in the fact that it has mountains, lakes, rivers, plains, wildlife, along with geothermal features. I love the Bumpus Hell area. This is pretty much on par with the best geyser basins anywhere else in the world. And that hike along with Lassen Peak are possibly top 20 hikes of the 150 or so I've done. Lassen Peak especially stands out. I love everything about this national park. There's abundant wildlife, wonderful hiking, so much to learn, geothermal features of all sorts, and it speaks to me in a way very few others do, but I highly recommend a visit to this underrated national park. Number 17 is Bryce Canyon National Park in Utah. This is one of the other glorious Mighty 5 Utah parks. And I like it more than Arches and Canyonlands mainly for the inner canyon hikes. The overlooks from above are expansive and give you excellent views of the rocky spires. But it's fantastic to go down into these spires, and I like that even more. Queen's Garden, Navajo, Fairyland, anything you do. No matter how you go into the canyon or what you see, I think it's likely you will be blown away by looking up at these narrow orange spires that are some of the most unique hoodoos and most unique rock formations of anything I've ever seen before. 16 is Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado. Certainly one that is more popular and well known, but that is for good reason. On top of having Trail Ridge Road and some of the best mountain scenery on any scenic drive, you have abundant wildlife. From moose to elk to bighorn sheep to deer to all sorts of other mammals, birds, and a lot more. This park has some of the best hikes, especially in the Bear Lake area for those who like a more accessible one, but there's great backcountry hiking, and if you're up to it, do the Longs Peak hike. This park has mountain scenery that could be the best if other national parks just weren't so good. Number 15 is Death Valley National Park in California. This one is almost always either really hot or really cold, so choose wisely when you go. But if you go here in either late fall or early spring, I think you will be blown away by one of the most diverse landscapes of any national park. This California park, and technically Nevada park, is massive, and you have everything from mountains to salt flats here, and in between you have canyons and badlands and sand dunes, and Zabriskie Point is one of my favorite overlooks in any national park. You have a surprising diversity of wildlife, with an abundant amount of butterflies being an interesting sight here, and Badwater Basin is a great way to end the night if you enjoy stargazing. Number 14 is Channel Islands National Park in California. This is among the most underrated national parks for sure. Even locals in areas like Los Angeles do not go here very often, and I think it deserves more credit. It is the Galapagos of North America. I feel that even though the scenery here is not as impressive as quite a few parks below it, the abundance of activities and wildlife here are hard to beat. You have everything in the ocean from dolphins to sea lions to whales. On the land you have foxes and unique birds and so much more. I enjoy every trip I've taken to Channel Islands National Park. The boat ride there is glorious. The hiking is some of my favorite. The remoteness adds a lot. And this is possibly my favorite island of any national park. Santa Cruz is the island I recommend you go to. There's also wonderful water activities including snorkeling, scuba diving, kayaking, and going to the kelp forests is an experience that can only be described as a face of God moment. And that stands out above nearly every other national park. Number 13 is Crater Lake National Park. Going here, I wasn't sure what to expect, but one look at the lake, and no photo or video can do this lake justice. This lake is immense, and it is the most beautiful lake I've ever seen. It is crystal clear, meaning a pure blue color that no other lake I've ever seen has. Not to mention, it's in a collapsed volcano. So you are on a mountain looking down into a lake. Any overlook of this lake is wonderful. And Crater Lake on its own, without the surrounding waterfalls, mountains, hikes, wildlife, would still be one of the most beautiful sites in America. And being one of the most beautiful sites in America means it definitely earned a high spot. Number 12 is Theodore Roosevelt National Park. The scenery on its own here does not earn a top 12 spot. I like the Badlands here for their grander scale, more rounded and unique nature, and much more diversity in color. But on top of that, you have some of the best wildlife with bison, pronghorn, elk, wild horses, deer, prairie dogs, the list goes on. You have great hiking, including Wind Canyon, Painted Canyon, Oxbow Bend, some really long trails such as the Madahe Trail. The Scenic Drive is such a nice one, and on the Scenic Drive I never saw a single other car. And that's something you don't experience in a whole lot of national parks. One of my favorite things here, though, is Cottonwood Campground. My favorite campground, being right along the river, with great stargazing, and you'll sometimes be visited by local wildlife residents. Theodore Roosevelt National Park is an underrated one, and it's one of the best hidden gems in the United States. Number 11 is Grand Teton National Park. I can see why this is number 1 for sure, for many. And the mountains themselves are a top-tier national park site. On top of that, the Snake River float trip is one of my favorite experiences, getting up close to beavers and bald eagles, along with getting different perspectives of the fantastic Grand Teton Mountains. Hiking into the mountains or around the mountains, every overlook of them, they are the star of the park. But there's so much wildlife here. I didn't mention the elk, bison, bears, and there's so much more here. This is definitely a national park that deserves to get a lot of respect, and I see why it's the number 1 for many, even with the neighbor Yellowstone sometimes overshadowing it. Number 10 is Olympic National Park in Washington. You have Hurricane Ridge and the Olympic Mountains being some of the most beautiful I've ever seen. You have the Hoh Rainforest with vibrant green colors and some lush scenery and legendary banana slugs. You have the coastline with Ruby Beach having some of the most impressive rock formations of any beach I've ever seen. These could, on their own, any of these 3 things, be the highlight of a national park. But Olympic has all 3. That is why it definitely deserved a top 10 spot. Number 9 is the Grand Canyon. This is number 1 for many, of course, and just know the only reason it is lower is because I like others more. The view of the canyon the first time you see it is awe-inspiring, and hiking into the canyon is vital. Many will say you cannot live until you've experienced a hike all the way through the Grand Canyon rim to rim. And I can see why. Going into the canyon, seeing a California condor, looking down to Plateau Point, going all the way everywhere, seeing so much of the unique rock formations from different perspectives, being above them, below them, it's an unforgettable experience. And there's a reason why Grand Canyon is probably the most well-known of any national park. It definitely deserves a lot of the praise it gets. The only thing I could say is somewhat held against this park is that due to its popularity, this one definitely has transformed a bit more into a very accessible tourist destination. So if that bothers you, that could be reason for this ranking lower. For me, it only ranks lower because even though it is literally a perfect national park, there are 8 others that are even more perfect. The first of those 8 is Zion National Park in Utah. This is just one of the best national parks for unrivaled desert scenery. You start at the bottom of Zion Canyon, going up to places like Angel's Landing, Observation Point, unforgettable views. Even smaller trails like Watchman will give views that easily beat Grand Canyon in my opinion. I just think Zion's expansive views that go on forever, and the contrast between the forested bottom and the orange rocky canyon walls, and even waterfalls here, makes for quite possibly the best national park. And yet it's still only got number 8. Number 7 is Big Bend National Park in Texas. This is one that I think everyone will be shocked to see in the top 10. But I think this is the most underrated of every national park. Similar to Olympic, you have the Chisos Mountains that are grand in size, rocky, different colors of all sorts. And Lost Mine Trail is one of my favorite trails of any national park. And you can look down and see black bears at sometimes. That was more of a lucky experience. But the Chisos Mountains are a fantastic start. Then you have Santa Elena Canyon and Boquillas Canyon, and they are both great sheer canyon walls with colorful rivers running through them. And then, of course, you have some of the best desert wildlife that no one is really aware of because it takes a lot to get to this park. But I have seen dozens upon dozens of birds here, including vermilion flycatchers, which was one of my favorite photos I ever got of any animal or even anything. Stargazing here is the undisputed best in my opinion. The bird watching's best. The diversity of scenery stands out. There are so many sights here. It's massive. It is a national park that stood out to me. And it's definitely one I think a lot more people should go to if they enjoy desert scenery and hikes. Number 6 is Yosemite National Park in California. This being number 6 more than speaks to how great the national parks are, because on its own in scenery, this could easily be number 1 for anybody. Yosemite Valley has El Capitan, Half Dome, Yosemite Falls, Bridal Veil Falls, and so much more. Mist Trail is one of my favorites. I enjoy Upper Yosemite Falls. I saw a rock slide here when I went, which definitely stood out. And even Hetch Hetchy and the other less visited areas of the park are absolutely worth a stop. There's so much to see here, and honestly, Tunnel View is just one of the most awe-inspiring and breathtaking views you'll get in any national park. This one is definitely popular, and that is for definitely very good reason. Number 5 is Katmai National Park in Alaska. I mentioned loving mountain scenery, and this mountain scenery is hard to beat. The Valley of 10,000 Smokes gives you views of volcanic ash covering a valley, rivers running through it, mountains surrounding it. Going up toward Mount Katmai and seeing the volcano from above is an unforgettable experience for sure. I also feel the standout attraction here everyone loves is the brown bears, and this wildlife sighting is among my favorites. Just watching bears fish among a small waterfall, it's something you don't see a whole lot of in other national parks. It takes a great amount of luck to see that in others. Here, it is not quite as much luck, and you are very likely to see several bears here, so a mix of some of the best wildlife and some of the best mountain scenery makes for a more than worthy of top 5 spot national park. Number 4 is Lake Clark National Park in Alaska. This one ranks slightly higher, primarily for mountain scenery. Flying into this park, I already thought it was one of the best, and I hadn't even set foot in the park yet. You have expansive glaciers, rugged mountains, waterfalls, lakes, rivers, all sorts of colors, from green to blue, white, brown, black, gray, everything. This park even has a very major trail that Katmai cannot counter. Tenalian Mountain, one of the most strenuous and rewarding hikes I've ever done. For wildlife, you can get up close to bears, wolves, and even Dall sheep. Wolves were probably the standout for me because I had never seen one in a national park up to that point, or even in the wild. The thing is, you'll be from a safe distance, but a safe distance is not too far away. So being so close to these, that is definitely an unforgettable and special sight. So I feel Lake Clark is absolutely worth a visit if you can make it. Number 3 is Glacier National Park in Montana. This is definitely a park worthy of number 1. And I feel so bad putting it at 3, but it just had to be. The standout thing here is Highland Trail being my single favorite trail in any national park. Staying at Granite Park Chalet and seeing rainbows over Grinnell Glacier Overlook. Avalanche Lake, going to the Sun Road, the wildlife including mountain goats and moose and black bears and grizzly bears and ruffed grouse and marmots and wolverines. There is so much to see here. The hikes are what stand out the most though. Going into the backcountry, being above a massive lush valley, and looking higher up to see some of the most sharp, colorful mountains, including Heaven's Peak, which is gorgeous. I feel this park is among the very, very best, and there's a reason why so many have it at number 1. Objectively, it might be number 1, and it definitely deserves a very high spot. Number 2 is Denali National Park in Alaska. In terms of sights, Denali itself is the single most beautiful thing I've seen in any national park. It is the most prominent mountain in the world. Its color is not like any other I've seen before, entirely white. And I feel there is nothing more awe-inspiring than looking at Denali on a clear day. On top of that, you have my favorite scenic drive of any national park, Denali Park Road, where you will see some of the big 5 wildlife. These mammals are moose, grizzly bears, caribou, dull sheep, and elusive wolves. I've seen 4 of the big 5 on both visits to Denali, and there is so much else to see here. I love Savage River, Horseshoe Lake, other views of other mountains, glaciers, rivers, and there's some excellent hikes in the first part of the park, but what stands out here is Denali. There is nothing compared to Denali for me, and it is the one national park site that I feel pretty much represents everything the National Park Service protects. And that is what makes Denali such a special national park. But there is one other that had to take the top spot. Number 1 is Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming and Montana and Idaho. I have done several videos about Yellowstone before, so those who are not new to the channel know that Yellowstone is my favorite park. The primary reason for this is not because of one main site or even having the best diversity technically, because what stands out here is the abundance of everything. I feel there are 10 sites here that are worthy of being national parks on their own. Old Faithful, Grand Prismatic Spring, Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, Lamar Valley, Hayden Valley, Norris Geyser Basin, Upper Geyser Basin, Yellowstone Lake, West Thumb Geyser Basin, Bunsen Peak, Mount Washburn, Tower Falls, the list goes on. Everything about Yellowstone is breathtaking. Driving around here, you are likely to see tons of wildlife. The wildlife here is my favorite of any national park. You'll see hundreds of bison, along with 2 species of bear, wolves, coyotes, and so much more. It goes from deer to elk to moose to pronghorn antelope to bald eagles. People will go here just to search for wolves. That's how major the Yellowstone wildlife is. Even the most casual visit to the park, a drive-through, can almost guarantee a major wildlife sighting. Hiking here is effortlessly beautiful because every mountain hike gives you a view of this expansive, over 2 million acre national park. I feel like diversity here, technically, in terms of the overall scenery, is not as present as some might say, because ultimately it is a large forest area with some mountains. But every mountain is stellar, every forest is stunning, and every geothermal feature here is the best it can be. The colors, the steam, the smell if it doesn't bother you. I feel that this is the most impressive national park for just how much there is to see. More activities, more scenery, more wildlife than any park. And I think there's a good reason why this was the first park to be designated as a national park. It set the standard for what the US should protect, and that is why the US now protects 63 incredible places as the national parks of America. And it is why Yellowstone is my favorite of every national park. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this very long ranking. I did want to talk about the best ones longer. I know I kind of rambled on with Yellowstone, but I encourage you to check out my other videos, especially those about Yellowstone. Those are always fun. Subscribe to the channel for more national park content, and I hope I'll see you next time.